Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm your host, Robin Hackney, and I'm so happy that you're here. This podcast is a place for conversations about balancing a healthy lifestyle and being happy, more specifically, happy hour. Together, we'll explore all things wellness and wine. I hope you learn a little, laugh a lot, and along the way, know you're not alone on this balanced wellness journey. Ready to jump in? Pour something in your glass that makes you happy because it's time for Spandex and Wine. Hello and welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm your host, Robin Hackney. So when I started this show, I sat down and I wrote a list of people that I knew and that would be great guests on the show, and I began reaching out to them. Then I also created a dream list of people that I didn't know, but I knew eventually I wanted to have on if possible. Today's guest is one from that dream list, and I'm so excited to share this episode with you all. Dr. Brandon Parker is a chiropractor, a podcaster, and an Instagram influencer, but not in the way that you might think. He has a following of almost 1 million people, and it is easy to see why. His reels actually help people move and feel better. He creates simple movements to help increase range of motion and decrease the risk of injury with the easy to follow demonstrations. I've used them in my classes and on myself. It's good stuff. Get ready to learn as you hear him share his background and tips on how you can move and feel better. Dr. Brandon Parker, welcome to the Spandex and Wine podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've been following you on Instagram and I absolutely love your reels. And I saw once that you said that your dream has always been to help people to move better and feel better through strength training, mobility exercises, proper nutrition, and optimizing mindset. And I think that is just amazing. And you're doing just that.
I really appreciate that. It was one of those things that, so prior to me becoming a chiropractor, I was a strength and conditioning coach, and I was working with professional athletes where they already kind of had the mindset dialed in. You didn't really have to convince them to do anything. It was more so, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And when I started to transition into general population, when I was more of a healthcare practitioner, it was a puzzling situation where it's like, I have all the answers for you. Why won't you take it? And I realized that the approach was much different, and you had to sit with your clients. You had to listen to them and really understand the roadblocks that they were facing. A good friend of mine utilizes the phrase that you can't expect somebody to free themselves from the jail that they don't know they're in. So you have to sit there and talk to them and figure out where they really are struggling. So that's kind of how I came upon what I specialize in today.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, and I want to talk about, all the different components of it. The strength training and the mobility exercises. I absolutely love following you, and you are touching so many lives. Number one, you have a wonderful following on Instagram. But it's funny because I was thinking I use so many of your things in my classes. So you're touching people, that you'll never know exactly how many people that you touch, but it's wonderful. And I do have to ask, where do you live? Because all of your reels on your deck look amazing.
I live in South Florida. When we first picked up this house, it was a train wreck. So the previous homeowners actually had a pig in the backyard.
Oh,
and
no.
so mounds of dirt and everything. And I thought to myself, like, okay, if I'm going to film something, I got to make my backyard at least appealing. And at first I hated it, and then it became my brand. So it's pretty interesting how that all kind of formed into itself.
Yes. Well, it's beautiful. And I could see how a pig would be very destructive. I live in Kansas, and today it's a rainy day, so you might hear the rain. And otherwise you would have heard my roosters and chickens out in the yard. So take me to, through some of your mobility exercises. So we joke every morning in our 6 a.m. class, my clientele is between 50 to 75. It's kind of a big range. And we all have some issue. It's funny because you wake up and you're like, okay, what's going to hurt today? So why are you so passionate about helping people with their strength training and mobility?
Yeah. So all considering, the average American is facing an epidemic that we haven't really faced before, where we're not necessarily we don't have a food scarcity problem anymore, and we have these people that don't have the general education that we used to have when it came to diet and nutrition. So we
Hmm.
have this dilemma where you have companies pumping out food that are chemically, or I would say industrially engineered to be almost addicting, right? Like
Yeah.
there's somebody getting paid six figures to say this isn't crunchy enough. Let's make this a little bit more
Yeah.
better for that. And you have people that just don't necessarily need to move like they used to because technological advances are getting better and better.
Hmm.
So I'm seeing that as we age, muscle mass is coming down and the fat storage is coming up. And when we get older, like that's supposed to be our golden years. And
Yeah.
I saw a large population of people just kind of just chalking it all up to age, and that's nothing further from the truth. And
Hmm.
if they were to just implement super basic, very simple strength training protocols where we're talking maybe 2 sessions a week, tops 30 minutes a pop, you can
Hmm.
change your life. And I think people just kind of put strength training and nutrition on this pedestal and they think like, oh, I can't be Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, I'm not asking you to be.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you to do the bare minimum so you can
Right.
really enjoy your life. And that's where I felt like I made the biggest impact because when you're younger, you take a lot for like a lot for granted. Like, yeah, I can move like that. It's like, well, you won't be able to if you don't stick with it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so do me a favor then, and I know this sounds really crazy, it's very basic, but define strength training because I think some people are very confused as to, oh, well, I do my 7 minute, tape. I guess they're not tapes anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
how would you define it?
phenomenal question. I get this question all the time because I guess I should. So I bounce between strength training and resistance training because I use those interchangeably. Because when I say resistance training, it's a little bit easier to explain where it's just you are resisting motion, right? So
Hmm.
that could be through bands, that could be through weight, that can be even in the pool if that's where your strength level is at. It's
Hmm.
just going through ranges of motion and challenging your body through that range of motion. Now,
Hmm.
if you're somebody like the prototypical clients that I work with, they go, "Well, I do my exercises every morning." And it's just, "Have you been using the same weights every day?" It's just,
Yeah.
"Yeah." "How much weight?" "It's the little pink 2 pound dumbbells." It's like, well, do you think that you're challenging your body to get stronger? And the answer is no, of course. And they're missing that key component of progressive overload. But all that to say, strength training is simply just challenging your body safely through a range of motion that hopefully transfers towards the goal that you have for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. I also think that you can challenge yourself in different ways. Like you get in a routine of always using your dumbbells. And like you said, using some bands and some tubes, use a kettlebell. Like
Yeah.
if you're doing a goblet squat with a dumbbell, try a kettlebell, try a
Yeah.
plate.
Exactly. And there's the one thing that I love about switching things up. I don't switch things up often because I do believe that there's a benefit to
Hmm.
pushing the same stimulus until it gets dull, but there's a other whole other side of like the psychology side, right? Keep
Yeah.
things fun, who cares if it's not optimal? At the end of the day, if you're showing up to do the exercise, you are more quote unquote optimal than if you just like, I'm not going to do it today because it's not fun to me, you know?
Yeah. 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 And I think that people also, when we're switching gears to a little bit to nutrition, people
Mhm.
don't realize that there are foods out there that will actually help their joints, that will decrease inflammation in their body. Speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah, so I like to keep it very simple because I've noticed with a lot of clients they want to nitpick on certain foods and then they load up their diet on this certain food and then they just get burnt out on it. Whereas if we're just focusing on a diet that has a high levels of antioxidants in it, you're going to get that inflammation killing effect, if you will. And I also
Mhm.
want to take a moment and say that inflammation isn't this boogeyman, if you will, that is our body's way to heal.
Mhm.
So we have to understand that some inflammation is important. It's how we build muscle. It's how we regulate our body. But that excessive amount of inflammation or the prolonged levels of low grade inflammation is what contributes to the osteoarthritis and all these pains that we might be feeling as we age. So I try to keep it very simple because a majority of people don't even hit on this. The standard recommendation is 5 to 6 servings of whether it be fruits or vegetables. When I ask people how
Hmm.
many are you getting, they're hardly breaking three,
It's
and
true. Yeah.
I don't know if you read this, but there was a recent study that came out that said that the number one source of antioxidants for an American is coffee. And that's
Oh,
cool. It's like, oh, there's a lot of antioxidants in coffee, but it more so shows that, oh my God, we are not eating any fruits or vegetables. We're relying on the stimulant
yeah.
to get us through the day, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And I was just listening to a podcast about a woman that, she does all of her own gardening and sustain. I
Mhm.
mean, she does everything. I'm like, this is amazing. But so many people don't have that option. And our soils are so depleted too that we do have to do some type of supplements and make that we a big range. And I just recently heard someone say every time that you're in the grocery store, pick up something different that you've never tried before.
I like that.
Whether maybe it's a mango and you don't usually have mangoes, or maybe it's I don't even know, a passion fruit or whatever it might be. And just try something different.
Yeah. I think there's two benefits to that. You got the side of things where you're experimenting with different foods. So you're opening up your variety of meals. Because I know some people, once again, they get bland and they just don't want to eat a certain way. But if you spice it up, you're more than likely to stay within your, for lack of a better words, macros and calorie intake to hit your goal, but also the side of microbiome, right? When we get exposed to all
Mhm.
these different fruits and vegetables, we are now putting different microbiomes or microbes into our gut, which actually helps benefit our immune system and all these different things that we classify as health. So I really like that approach.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really cool advice too. And I've done it before, like in a challenge. I do a healthy body challenge every fall. And
Mhm.
one year we did, what did we do? I think it was like 6 or 7 colors, and you had to get a vegetable in each color that week.
I like that. I like that a
I know.
lot.
So, like, a lot of people were trying purple potatoes because they'd never tried that before.
I will tell you, I am a creature of habit, and like I do the whole age old thing, like shop the perimeter of the store, and like it's
Hmm.
almost like for me, I have my blinders on, and I think that having a challenge like that will actually open up my food palette, if you will. For me, like I'm like I'm a to-do lister, right? Like all right, I'm in and out of the store while my wife is
Yeah.
going up and down each aisle, looking at each little thing. I'm just like, come on, let's go home. But I like that challenge. I think I actually might put myself through that.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be good. Good. So, do you still have a chiropractic practice?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
you
I
do?
do
Okay.
I do a hybrid approach, and I think that it really benefits my perspective. I do 3 days in person, and then I do the other 3 days or 4 days online. And I usually have this circumstance where some of my online clients come see me in person, and vice versa. The reason why I have this approach is I really do believe in what we call self-efficacy, where I'm building the confidence in my patients where they can really do this on their own. I don't like the idea where somebody has chronic low back pain and they feel like they have to come see me to get themselves out of this flare up. Because what if they're, for example, I had a client that was in the Poconos. Like I'm nowhere near the Poconos, So luckily enough, I have this approach where, online I say, okay, here's the lower back flare up protocol that I think you should benefit from. And then just remember that this is temporary. You most likely didn't damage your lower back. Your body
Mhm.
is just hypersensitive at this moment. Does that make sense?
Mhm. It does make sense, yes, but I also feel like you could have traveled to the Poconos and written it off. I mean, that's the way I would put a vacation in there, but that's just me. Oh, goodness. So I know for myself, as I've gotten older, and there's different parts that don't work as well, and my hips
Mhm.
especially. So that's one reason why I was so attracted to your reels and everything that you do, because you do focus a lot on hip mobility,
Yeah.
among other joints.
Yeah.
Um, but someone that's sitting there and just thinking, okay, there's no way I could work out because I'm in so much pain.
Mhm.
What would you say to that person?
That's a great. I encounter that quite a bit. They think that when you say exercise, I always try to unpack it. Questions are always going to give you the answers and the perspective you're looking for. When I sit there and ask, "What do you think of?" When I say exercise, what are you thinking? Because you seem pretty opposed to it, and then they jump to Olympic style lifting, some football player training for the next football game. It's just like, or it can be a simple stretch to an area that you want to desensitize. And when
Yeah.
you start to kind of change their perspective and their expectation of what exercise is, they get a little bit more open to it. And especially for somebody that is in pain or somebody that goes through these flare up patterns where they're maybe they'll just do something very simple and they'll flare up their lower back, like let's say grab something awkwardly off the floor. And then they're
Hmm.
out for a week, right? Well,
Hmm.
you have to sit there. You have to give them something that's going to build their confidence because right now their confidence is through the floor. They don't
Hmm.
they think that they sneeze wrong, they're not going to be able to do something. Well,
Yeah.
from that perspective, do you think that they're going to actually live a free and full life? I would say no. So my goal when I'm dealing with somebody like that is, or I would say working with somebody like that, is what is the most low grade movement that we can do that you can even laugh at me and say, that's what you're going to make me do every day? It's fine. Do it.
Yeah.
Because then the next time we're going to scale it up and then scale it up and to the point where they're going to be doing your prototypical exercises, such as the squat, the hinge, things like that. But when somebody's in pain, the whole idea is what can I get away with? How can I desensitize the body and build confidence? Because a lot of people, they don't realize that what's going on between the ears can actually intensify their pain 10 fold. So
Yeah.
um, I'll share a small story because I think it's very powerful. When I was in chiropractic school, we had a student clinic and we had to treat a certain amount of people before we graduated. I had a 20, I think 22-year-old gymnast. She got an MRI, she got an X-ray, and this is very rare. Both reports said no blemishes, no problems, no anything. And she had 10 out of 10 low back pain every time she tried to reach for her toes. So a standard, I mean, this happened to her, a standard doctor would be like, yeah, you're fine, walk it off. Right. Well, clearly she's in pain. So
Right.
what we had to do is we sat down and we had to address why she thought she was in pain and what we can do. And essentially, we had to unpack her fears and confront them, almost like a form of exposure therapy. And what we actually did, which seems so on paper, people laugh at it, but we just had her try to reach for her toes. And the second she started to feel pain, she doesn't get out of it, slowly breathe,
Yeah.
examine the pain, see if the pain's moving, and it would move. It would, instead of it being the lower back on one side, it would go to the other side. So it begged the question, okay, if your lower back was truly damaged, do you think the pain would just travel like crazy? Well, the answer was no.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, so we know that there's something else influencing this. So we just kept going down this rabbit hole of asking questions and trying to expose the body to this position. It was about 3 treatments in, just touching toes, and she ended up touching her toes, and she was completely resolved of her lower back pain. It blew my mind, but that
Wow.
really illuminates how much our mind plays a role in our ability to move and feel free.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. And I love that you address the psychological aspect of it as well, because you're right. I mean, once you get into your head, oh my gosh, I don't want to hurt myself. Last spring, this is going to sound really crazy, and I don't know if I should share this story, but because it sounds better than what it was. But
Mhm.
I sprained my pelvis
Okay.
on date night, but not, it wasn't that much fun. So we decided that we were going to go to the golf simulator and hit some balls, but why wouldn't you have a couple cocktails first? And
I,
so we went and had cocktails. Well, then, I'm all tipsy and I'm like, I'm going to hit this ball as hard as I can. I did. And the next day I played in 2 cornhole tournaments. I couldn't move. And the chiropractor's like, Robin, I don't know if I've ever seen this before. You sprained your pelvis, and I'm still dealing with it. And that was like almost a year ago. But I have gotten it in my head too. Okay, I don't want to hurt myself,
Mhm.
but I want to push myself. So then I
Mhm.
just get frustrated.
Mhm.
And it's just, you're right. We do it to ourselves. We just continually go through that.
Are you familiar with the stoplight analogy by any chance?
I don't think so.
So this is something that I utilize with a lot of my clients, and I think you might benefit from it. And then if not, you can always use it with your clients.
Hmm.
So the stoplight analogy is like think of a typical stoplight. You got your green, yellow, and red light, right?
Hmm. Okay.
If you're doing a movement and the pain is anywhere between a 1 and a 3, that's a green light. It's actually fine. You can keep exercising through it.
Okay.
There's a small caveat, but I'll put it at the end. And then you have your yellow light, which is basically 4 through 6. That's when you're like, okay, maybe we can use a modification. See if we can, let's say, lessen the weight, lessen the reps, or change our stance a little bit if we're squatting to see if we can bring that pain down. And then 7 and above, that it would be considered a red light, where we're just like, all right, shut it down, try a different movement, and see how we are, see how we're adapting to that. And
Hmm.
that gives a lot of people freedom, where when a lot of, because most people, they'll try to exercise the area that was once hurt, they'll feel a inkling of discomfort and they're like, oh, I got to stop what I'm doing. And that's
Yeah.
actually more detrimental than exercising with a little bit of discomfort. Now, exercising with a little bit of discomfort isn't a necessity, but there is research that shows that it is beneficial, because I believe that when you are like, oh, it hurts exactly, or the exercise is targeting exactly where it hurts. Well, we know we're passing tension through the tendon, ligament, or muscle. Therefore, we are strengthening the area and desensitizing the area. So
Hmm.
I love that framework because it gives people that I guess freedom to move, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it just gives you the choice and the ball's in your court if you decide, okay, is this right for me? Is it not right for me? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The caveat that I was going to say is, if you're at a 1 to 3, right, and it's a green light, but the pain starts to creep up, that is an exception where you might as well stop the movement where it's at and then switch it up, because you don't want to just keep grinding into the point where you're in a yellow or red light situation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good to know. I like that. I am going to use that. That is wonderful. So you have your chiropractic care business, and then you have all of your reels that you're doing on Instagram, and you also have a podcast.
I do. Yes.
Yeah. I was just listening to it just a couple of days ago. It's wonderful. And we started our podcast at about the same time.
Really?
It
That's
was the same
amazing to
week.
hear.
Yep. I started on my birthday, October 10th, and you were just a few days before that.
I'll tell you what, I'm super glad to hear that you're doing a podcast. Not only does it connect people like you and I, but it really does help a lot of people at a level that's deeper than your prototypical reels. I have to keep my reels so superficial because the algorithm will crush it. Whereas
Yeah.
on podcast, I can really give you the step by step. And I'm sure that you can do the same, and you're connecting
Hmm.
people with new people, which is also super powerful. So I'm glad that you
Hmm.
started it.
Yeah, me too. Up until like last May, I had never even listened to a podcast. And
Really?
I know it was just one of those things that I saw a workshop, a week-long workshop. I'm like, oh, I'll just try it. I'm going to learn something that I can use in my business. And I took it and I'm like, maybe this is my next step. And I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, like you said, I get to meet people like you.
Mhm.
It's also taught me to slow down, to listen, have a real conversation, and be in that moment, which I
And
love.
I'll tell you what, it's hard. It is hard when I first started my podcast. So I had a podcast prior. It was just like I was just bursting at the seams, ready to say something, but it's just like,
Yeah.
relax, Brandon. Like, you actually have to hear the person and
Yeah.
respond in a way that is meaningful versus just what you planned to say 15 minutes prior.
Yes. Yes. And it's true because a lot of people will say, okay, what questions are you going to ask me? And I'm like, well,
Mm,
I want to give you a list, but I'm not going to go in order. I want it to be a conversation. Some
exactly.
people are just listening in on our conversation, which is
Yeah, I
kind
love
of weird and random.
I'm a podcast fiend. I listen to that's the only thing I really do listen to now. Like, I love music, but if I have an opportunity, it's most likely a podcast.
Okay, what are you listening to right now that you love?
So the big things that I'm listening to right now is a couple of coaches that are friends of mine. I adore their ability to break down certain concepts in a way that's very digestible.
Mhm.
I do believe that you can have all the information in the world, but if you're speaking a different language, it's lost on the people that don't speak your language. So I listen to a good friend of mine, Jared Hamilton. He
Mhm.
specializes in helping people avoid binge eating, whereas a lot of people get into a situation where they restrict because they've been told that this food is bad, and then they just let the craving build up to a point where it's just insatiable, and then they derail their goals. So
Mhm.
he's really good at breaking it down, giving analogies, and making it really stick with you. And then the other podcasts that I listen to, this is more so on the business side. That you might enjoy this podcast. His name's Alex Hermosi. Alex Hormozy, he's just really good at cutting through all the business and just saying, look, business is three things. And if you do these three things and you do them well, you're going to see great results. And I'm the type of person where it's like, let's cut through the noise. What's the 80/20? How can I make this so
Yeah.
simple that you can't fail? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So how can everyone find you?
So if anyone's looking to be annoyed by my voice, you can find me at bs.parker on Instagram. From there, you'll be able to find my podcast, which is now it's named the Revival Method Podcast, where I also have a community and all these other things. I find everything to be easy if I leave it in that link on my Instagram. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I saw that you do some one-on-one coaching.
I do. Yes, I definitely open up to one-on-one coaching. Right now, we are full currently, but like we are opening up a couple of slots coming up. I guess I could tease it here. I didn't tease it on my own podcast yet, but I have something special coming down the pipeline where some people, they're on the fence. They don't know if they want coaching. So I'm actually going to make an offer where people will feel silly for saying no. But
good. Okay.
Yeah. So the people that will be seeing that first is the people on my newsletter and my podcast. And then I'll start trickling it down to the big pages, because I think the people that are in my community that we connect a little bit better, I want to give them the deal first, if you will.
That's awesome. I like that tease. That's great. I just recently signed up for your newsletter, so I'll be in the know.
Oh, awesome. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for sharing this time. You know, when I reached out to you, I was going to put in the intro that you were one of my dream guests. You were on my dream guest list. So yes. So I'm very happy that you said yes. I thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge with us.
Of course. If you ever want me to come back on, just let me know.
Lovely. I would love that. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, and that you'll look Brandon up, follow him on Instagram, watch all of his reels, and benefit from everything that he is doing. Here are a few takeaways. 1, mindset is everything. You can't expect to be freed from a jail you don't know you're in. Take the time to recognize your roadblocks or get a coach to help you so you can move forward. 2, as we age, muscle mass declines and fat storage increases, and chalking it up to age should not be the excuse. If you can implement even super basic strength training protocols, maybe just 2 sessions per week for 30 minutes each, you could change your life. 3, strength training, also called resistance training, is taking your body through a resisted range of motion. Could be body weight, think squats or push-ups, could be with the bands, dumbbells, or even in water. You do need to challenge your body for it to get stronger and for this to work, also known as progressive overload. So that might mean increasing the weight or using a variety of equipment. 4, the psychology side of exercise is real. Find something that is fun, works in your body, and keeps you engaged. 5, eat a variety of fruits and vegetables to get all of your nutrients. You might try picking up something new each week at the store or eat from the rainbow of colors. 6, when it comes to exercising while injured, oftentimes we have limiting beliefs about what we can and cannot do. Use the stoplight approach, as Dr. Brandon described, to know if it is a movement you should or should not be doing. Again, all of his links will be shared in the show notes. And just a huge thank you to Dr. Brandon Parker for taking the time to share with all of us. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to follow Spandex and Wine so you don't miss an episode. To do this, just go to the podcast and click subscribe or follow wherever you are listening. Look for the plus sign or follow button. This is one of the best things that you can do for the podcast. If you'd also be willing to give a 5-star review, that would be amazing and much appreciated. Lastly, please share an episode with a friend or 5 to keep the love going, and join the Spandex and Wine community in our private Facebook group by searching Spandex and Wine. Feel free to reach out to me at any time by emailing info@spandexandwine.com or text me at 913-392-2877. I appreciate you. Thank you.